Hello YouTube, decided to do a video on it after kind of thinking about it a little bit, but to be honest, I'm still kind of sentimental over Windows even though I don't like the direction that's going. Okay, what do I mean about that? I've been a computer technician since the Windows XP era. I started dabbling in computers, configuring, reinstalling Windows, stuff like that since I was in middle and high school, and we were into the XP era a little bit. I think it was like XP Service Pack 1 or whatever. And there were still some computers around that ran Windows 98 Second Edition. Windows ME was one that I remember seeing. But that being said, yeah, I did tinker with the Windows. I didn't get into Linux a whole lot until recently. And the reason why is because I don't like where Microsoft is going when pushing this online only stuff. So a lot of people are talking about on Reddit, and mostly they're talking about other ways to bypass the online requirement, but it seems like every time Microsoft releases a major update like 23H2, 24H2, 20, the upcoming 25H2, they seem to patch another bypass. I think 24H2 they patched, or 23H2 they patched, or no, yeah, it was 24H2 they patched OOBE backslash bypass NRO, so that's won't work on newer 24H2 ISOs. Currently, unless you're working on an insider preview, start space ms-cxh colon local only works. But I don't know how much or for how much longer if Microsoft does patch that in the upcoming 25H2 like they did in the current insiders build, then that's going away. So it looks like you still may be able to use Unattend, but it's like how long is that going to last before they restrict Windows Home Edition at least from that? Windows Pro Edition, you used to be able to click enroll in a local Active Directory or whatnot, and then it would let you make a local account. That doesn't work in Pro anymore. That's an enterprise only feature now. So it seems like at every turn Microsoft's forcing people to make online accounts, and that is why I started to look away from um, or look towards moving away from Microsoft in general, at least on a personal level, and going with something like Linux. And I did that in the past 2 years for Theme Basket Auction. All of my computers have been on Linux. So last year I was on Linux Mint. This year we were on Fedora Kinioi, or however you say that. So so yeah, here on the Fedora page, uh, it's the Atomic Desktops, and it's this one. So all three of the laptops, uh, except for my own, which uses mainline Fedora KDE, we were using this, and it worked fine. So yeah, that's one thing I'd point out is like, yeah, I don't go with Windows anymore on my Theme Basket Auction computers because we don't always have internet, depending on what venue we're at, because we were at the old Kmart building the 1 year, no internet in there, barely got cell service in there. So when I had to activate Microsoft Access, because I decided that it wasn't going to activate last time I had internet, which was a couple weeks before, it decided to boo us off mid-event. Like, it couldn't last 2 days without checking into the internet. Then it booted us off, so I had to tether off my phone and get them reactivated mid-event, and that was a pain in the ass. So at that moment, I'm like, okay, what do we have to do to get rid of Microsoft on these machines? And programming my own solution was a way to do that, and that's why I did that personally. And the other thing too is I was like trying to set up a Windows 11 computer to communicate to CNC machines, and this memory integrity setting could not figure out how to turn it off. Like it would say that it's off when I click it, and it's like it needs to reboot to take effect. I'd reboot, it would turn itself back on. So tried a few other things. I think one of the things I tried was disabling Windows Update. Pretty much exhausted all that I was reading online. Didn't matter, still would just turn itself on after a restart. So hopefully that won't cause issues, but if it does, I might look at Linux solutions for that machine too. Because it's just getting to the point where I need to cut my losses and stop spending time trying to diagnose why that won't stay off, and just use something else. So what can you use if you did want to try something else? There's several Linux distributions. The first two I'll point out are Linux Mint. Linux Mint is Ubuntu based. Ubuntu is a big name in Linux typically, especially for beginners. And they're Canonical and Ubuntu are pretty much responsible for making Linux free if you look at the history of things. So you can download it, try out, and there's installation guides, stuff like that, that are linked on some of these pages. I would back everything up or just install it on an old computer, something that you have laying around, something that you don't care if you just wipe and put Linux on it just to try out. And as you get more and more, because when you do install Linux, you do typically have to learn at least a little bit more about how computers typically work. You will become smarter when it comes to operating a computer and a process. That's part of the point in it. But the thing is, it's your own experience. If you want to customize it, do what I do, or you can have when your music plays or whatever. I won't play it for too long. So it shows this down in the corner. So that's something that I did using a widget that I found is called like command output or something like that. And I just I put it down there. I came up with a command, which are my dot files. If you wanted to download that, and it just runs that like every 5 seconds or whatnot, or I think it's every like second and a half or something. And then if it's playing, it'll show the song title and the artist and on the taskbar. And that's typically something that you can do with Linux if you just learn just a little bit about how things work in it. I actually didn't do a whole lot to make that work. It was like, I think it was like, ended up being 4 or 5 lines of code or something like that. And not a whole lot. Like, I'm actually not a programmer. I'm a computer technician. I learned enough to be dangerous when it comes to programming, but I'm not a programming expert. But yeah, the second one I'd recommend is Kubuntu. And the reason why I'm recommending these two first before Fedora, which is what I'm currently on, is because these use a Calamares installer. The Calamares installer is easier to understand, especially if you're used to the Windows installer. The one thing I do like about Calamares more than the Windows installer is you can actually pick your time zone. I hate it, especially when you use an offline account bypass on Windows. You don't get an opportunity to change your time zone. So especially if you're like me, you're on or not on the East Coast, but I'm actually in the Eastern Standard Time zone, which is the same time zone as the East Coast. It's like your clock's going to show like 5 hours ahead or 4 hours ahead of time or something like that. And you're like, what the heck? Then you go into where it's in the settings there, and oh yeah, it's not set to the right time zone. So that's the thing I do like about the Calamares installer. Kubuntu is a little more related to Ubuntu because it has snaps and stuff like that. Some of your software on it's going to be in snap format, meaning that it'll automatically update, including your web browser, which might be a good thing if you're not good about installing updates. do that and leave that alone and enable operating system updates, and you'll be up to date and secure. Don't have to worry about it. So if you're bad about installing updates, you might want to consider that. Fedora Linux, its installer is still pretty easy. Is uh, the KDE Plasma, I think, is still using, and that's why I'm on. It's a lot like Windows. You got your start menu down the lower left hand corner and all that. But its installer is still like Fedora's, and Fedora's kind of in the same ecosystem as Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Fedora is kind of the test bed for Red Hat Enterprise, so it's a little bit more bleeding edge than Red Hat Enterprise Linux is, but it's free, so like you can just download, install it, use it at home. But it uses their own Anaconda installer, which is a little bit harder to use, but it's still not horribly difficult. I would recommend Fedora for developers because it has Podman integrated. So if you're developing for things that are going to run on a server, like web apps, stuff like that, might want to consider that because Podman's essentially built into it. You just have to enable that and Podman restart if you have containers that you want restarting when you reboot your computer or turn it on. But yeah, those are Linux distributions I'd recommend, either one of these three if you're used to Windows. Start out with one of these three. If you feel like tinkering with them more, learning more, eventually going to Arch or something like that, Omachi or whatever you decide to do down the road, that's your choice. You can go as far as you want to, or you can just remain on the same platform. As much as some people encourage distro hopping, saying that you must distro hop, it's not a requirement in my opinion. Just use what you're happy with. So that's my opinion on that, and I just wanted to bring up some alternatives to Windows that I would recommend trying if you're used to Windows. So I guess that's it for today. I'm rambling, so I'll catch you in the next one.